Welcome to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. If this is your first time checking us out here on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you are, we welcome you to the show. If you're a returning audience member, we welcome you back to the show. And we hope that you enjoy tonight's episode, which is all about STEAM. And we're going to talk a lot about STEAM in just a few minutes. But before we do that, let's take care of some housekeeping items. First things first, if you love Identity Talk for Educators Live and you want to listen to more content, be sure to subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and all streaming platforms. We are all over Identity Talk for Educators Live. And then also, in Identity Talk, we have a few things going on. First things first, we have our virtual school for our K-12 teachers who are looking to get some professional development credits. Right now, we have two courses that we're currently offering. The first course is Shape of the Teacher Identity 101, which is for teachers who are looking to identify who they are in the classroom and how they can be change agents for their students and at the same time live out their authentic mission in education. So in that course, we focus on culturally responsive teaching, classroom management, lesson planning, parental and family engagement, and many other essential topics. So if you are an educator, K-12 teacher who's looking to get some professional development credits, if you're in the state of Massachusetts, just know that Identity Talk Consulting is a DESE-approved PD provider, so you will get credits for taking this entire program. Even if you're not in Massachusetts, you would still be eligible to get some professional development points when you submit it to your state Department of Education. So make sure you check us out at calendly.com/Identity Talk for Educators if you want to book a call with us. And then our second program is Spell, which is for those who want to learn how to write a book and self-publish. So Spell, the Self-Publishing Educators Learning Lab, will teach you the whole process of self-publishing from beginning to end. So if you are an aspiring author who's looking to publish that first book, make sure you book a call with us today at calendly.com/Identity Talk for Educators to learn more about the program. And that is it for our announcements. Now let's get to the main event. So right now we're bringing on a chemistry professor, y'all, a STEAM outreach advocate, not to mention a volleyball superstar. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And she's now adding author to her list of different roles that she plays. So she is an all-around phenomenal woman who is doing phenomenal things in the world of STEAM. So without further ado, I want to bring on Dr. Yasmine Daniels to the podcast so she can engage with us. Hello.
Oh, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here.
So how are things going?
Things are going really well. I'm still just kind of riding on the excitement wave for the book, having just come out. I've been getting a lot of good feedback. I'm so excited about all of it. Have a few awesome things in store that are coming up. So can't wait to share a lot of those things with you also.
And we're going to be talking about your book series in a second. But just a quick plug. Listen, I know we have Black Friday coming up. Let's make sure that we're supporting our Black women businesses and Black women vendors. It's important. So if you haven't bought from a Black woman vendor or business, please be sure to do that. We have Dr. Daniels here, who's going to talk about her book, which is a great book, especially for our science lovers of STEAM. So make sure that you check it out. All right. So much we have to talk about. So let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
What brought you into education? So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and growing up.
Okay. So I actually I was born in Brooklyn, so I'm from Brooklyn, New York. But I was actually raised in the Caribbean. So my both of my parents are West Indian. My mom's family is from St. Lucia, and my dad's family is from Guyana. So I'm a hybrid of the two cultures. And so in both sides of those of my family, the my relatives are very big on education. I have my grandmother was a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My aunts from both sides, mom and dad side of the family, teaching. So education was something that was really emphasized in my upbringing. And the value of education and the opportunities that education would afford to me, such as access to things, obviously money. The more education you have, usually you consider that to equate to like a better paying job, that kind of thing. So it's something that I was raised on, and like I said, as I started to keep my head in the books, and that was a term that we were always sort of taught, keep your head in the books, keep your head in the books, don't stray off and get distracted. So as I started to do that, I started to love it. I started to see that it actually opened up doors for me in terms of scholarships, things like that, meeting more people, getting into special programs. And, as you start to get into these things, more doors open up. So it was sort of like an initial pushing into that field or into education. And then once I got in there, I didn't want to leave because I love what it did. And so education for me is really big. And that's why I'm such a strong advocate for education, because I think that, education will open up a lot of doors for a lot of kids who don't necessarily have maybe the financial resources to access the things that they want to get access to.
No, and I couldn't agree with you more. Now, you are a chemistry professor.
Yes.
So I want to know from you, can you remember that very moment when you fell in love with science and then you told yourself, this is what I want to do for a living. This is it right here.
Okay. It's a good question. I think I've been asked that question probably only once before, and my response is the same. So I did not necessarily have what you would call like a eureka moment or like an aha moment for me when it came to science. It was a lot of trial and error, and it was a lot of me sort of sticking to what I was good at. So initially, like I said, I was big on education. I did a lot of studying and reading and things like that. So I got good grades because of that. And then I started to notice that I liked things like numbers and patterns and, things that forced me to use logic. And that, typically is what you see in the field of science and STEM. So I started to do better at those classes, not necessarily knowing that I would stick with it as far as, being a scientist goes, but I more so thought that I would probably go into the medical field, and that was something that was big in my upbringing. You're good in school, you're smart, okay, you're going to be a medical doctor, an MD. And I think a lot of people can attest to that same kind of feeling, because you don't hear a lot about, at least in my culture when I was growing up, you don't hear a lot about pursuing the PhD in a scientific field. So so I was always had it in the back of my head that I would probably end up going to medical school, doing something like that. And throughout college, I continued to take the courses that I was good at, like math, science, physics, things like that. Um, and I ended up actually, when I was towards the end of my undergraduate career, I ended up applying to a graduate program in psychology. And the reason that I did that is because while I was an undergrad, I was taking an independent research project. I undertook an independent research project in a psychology lab, and I really liked it. So I started to take some prereqs in psychology, behavioral psychology, and then because I had all of this research experience in psych, I equated that to me obviously continuing onto a graduate program, because obviously I had the background. I knew somewhat the project and the research that I wanted to do in graduate school at that point. I had the recommendations from the professors and the graduate students and the postdocs that I was working with. So I thought at that point that I was set. I probably am going to pursue psychology, knowing very well that I was good at chemistry. I was actually a chemistry major because I had taken so many chemistry courses and, those sort of hardcore science courses. But again, because I had that sort of hands-on experience in an independent study lab, doing my own experiments in psych, I thought, well, this is what I have to do, obviously. So, so I got to the application process. I sent out the application, and I actually got called for an interview to, a graduate school interview to my top choice, which was Columbia University. And I
Nice.
really wanted to go there. Yeah, I wanted to go there so badly because I had done an internship there one summer, fell in love with the campus. It's New York City and it's one of the best schools there, obviously. So it gave me an opportunity to stay home, stay home based, not in my house, but, be close to home, but also to go to a really prestigious school and do some phenomenal research. So I went to the interview, thought, sometimes when you get the call for the interview, you automatically think that, oh, that's it, I got it. And you think that sometimes, I know I think that with a job, I thought that with grad school, but I went, and I say but because, there's like something coming. But
Right.
so I did the interview. And so at the end of everything, I ended up not getting in. And I think at that point, I was extremely disappointed and stressed. And I had only applied to psychology graduate programs at that point. So I had gotten to a moment where I didn't really know what I was going to do. Like, do I take a year off? Do I go to grad school? Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I had actually done a separate independent study in a chemistry lab, which I didn't spend much time doing. It was, I think, almost one semester's worth of work, but I had actually churned out so much data. And I was under the assumption that this was just temporary. The only reason I did that project was because I had mentioned before, I was a chemistry major because I had all these courses under my belt. And so in order to graduate with honors in your major, you have to also submit an independent study, project with with your thesis, your graduation thesis project. So I had done that separately. So I was sort of juggling two different labs. And so the psychology lab was more so because I was part of a minority program, research-based program that provided students stipends to work in these labs. And so I was matched with that lab, started doing it, loved it, stuck with it for about 2 years. And then towards the very end of college, I was informed by my department chair, I think is who you talk to, it's not a guidance counselor, that I needed to submit something in chemistry as well. So, I was like, oh my God, scrambling, I have to come up with this project in this semester. So I did that simultaneously, but never thinking that I would actually go and pursue a career in chemistry. So I remember I got the letter saying that I didn't get in. I was really stressed. I went into, I think it was like towards the end of the year. So I went into the chemistry lab, spoke to the professor who was the mentor, the principal investigator of that lab, and told him, yeah, I didn't get into the psychology program that I really wanted to go to. I'm not even interested in looking at anything else. I may just take a year off. I probably will work in your lab for a year, try to get some funding. And so he said to me, well, why don't you just apply to the graduate school here and stay in this lab and do your dissertation here? And I sat for a second and I thought, what? I could like stay here, like that absolutely never crossed my mind. Like why?
Right.
Sometimes things are right under your nose and you don't even know. And so he said, think about it. I'm not going to force you to stay, in a school that you don't want to stay in. And so I had done 4 years in that school already. So for me, I needed to like spread my wings, and all of my peers were going to these like phenomenal, schools. Not saying that my undergraduate school was not phenomenal, but they were like, throwing these big Ivy League names around. And so, you wanted to be part of that bandwagon. So he said it and I sat, I slept on it. And I think the next day I was just kind of like, why not? Like this, I actually love, I've been getting good grades in chemistry for as long as I know. I, have all these courses under my belt. I don't even need to think about, fulfilling any kind of prerequisite for the graduate program. I have a professor here who obviously would write me a glowing recommendation because he's recommending me to stay in the program. So
Right.
why not an application? And so I think at that moment, I guess if you really want to know what the aha moment was, like it was more like a duh, like why didn't you do this in the first place? Why are you sort of chasing all these wild things? And sometimes it's good to stick with what you know. So in any case, I ended up filling out one of the electronic applications. It got processed almost immediately. I think those things are amazing. And I got an acceptance. I think I sent it out in the morning. I got an acceptance in the afternoon. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, this is all the stress that I was feeling yesterday. It's gone. Like, this makes so much sense. And it's like sometimes you wait for that, that moment of just moment of peace where you can actually feel like things are starting to make sense. And that's for me where I had that moment of peace when I decided to stick with the chemistry program at the school that I was already at. And to do something that I was already good at and something that I really enjoyed doing. And it turned out to be the best choice I've ever made in my life, quite honestly. I've had such a great experience going through that program because graduate school can be very difficult.
Yes, it
Who knows
can.
what yeah, so so
Yes.
who knows what I could have probably faced going to any other institution, but knowing that I had a mentor who already pretty much latched onto me before I even latched onto him. He told me, I'm going to take you under my wing. You probably should think about staying here. And that's exactly what he did. Like, he groomed me into the scientist and chemist that I am today. So in my book, actually, which we're going to talk about later, I talk about him in a little bit in the beginning, for really influencing my decision to stay and to stick with the sciences and chemistry specifically.
Wow, this is just a phenomenal story. And we're just beginning too. We're just beginning. So I want to find out from you. I know growing up, I didn't see a whole lot of women of color in science. I grew up in the Bill Nye the Science Guy era. A lot of a lot of people who I saw in science were white men. So I want to know what needs to be done to inspire more girls of color to pursue the sciences.
That's a really good question. And that's where I'm the most passionate. So you said a lot of the things that really speak to me. You said inspire, you said, girls, you said people of color. So these are primarily the things that I try to focus on in the work that I do, especially the outreach initiatives. So for starters, I think it's great because this is such a big topic right now, and I don't want to necessarily get into politics to tonight, but
No.
know that our VP is a woman of color, which is amazing. Or I guess we can say the VP elect if you want to be, I guess, PC. But knowing also that her mom was a scientist, that really, I think, gave a lot of female scientists of color hope that we can get a lot more support from, public institutions and or the government. So, that actually is a pinnacle of hope for a lot of us right now. So that's the first thing I kind of wanted to get off my chest. But the second thing that you mentioned is, growing up, you not seeing a lot of that, and I think I felt the exact same way. Growing up, I didn't see a lot of people like me in the sciences. I went to school in New York City for the most part. So I was, I guess, fortunate in a sense to be in a very diverse city where I got to see people like me a lot more. Um, there are people who go to HBCUs, obviously, so you can be around, people of color. But for the most part, you don't tend to see a lot of us in those fields. And, representation does matter, and it does help to, to nurture the next and up and coming generation into sticking in these fields. So I think it's really important that we try to mentor younger people. And that's something that I'm very big on, mentoring. So that's sort of like one of the main areas that I like to focus on. So even if it's not in a formal setting, you can informally mentor someone, a niece, a nephew, a friend, a godchild, whoever you can, sort of try to reach out to, especially if you're in the field of science and or education. I actually, I don't think we've spoken about this offline, but you may have seen a post about it on my page. I recently started mentoring a group of girls, and they are young Black girls.
I
Um,
saw that.
yeah, in the age range of, they have a very big range. I believe they're 5 to 12. And it works because the older girls help me sort of mentor the younger ones too in the program. And it's not a very big group. We don't have, I think it's under 10 in our sort of cohort. But we meet up once a month and we talk about some very important topics. And, you know, it's interesting that you ask me about this now, like representation in STEM, because that was our topic last month. And so last month was also, we also had National Chemistry Week within the month. And so we spoke about what it actually takes to be a scientist and what they thought a scientist looked like. And one of the activities we did, and this is a virtual mentoring, by the way. So one of the things that we did was I asked them the question, like, what do you guys think a scientist looks like? You know, I started saying it's chemistry week. Do you know what that means? Do you know what a scientist would look like? And so they all grabbed a piece of paper, a pen, a crayon, a marker. And I said, well, draw what you think it looks like. And then when you hold it up, you get to talk about it. Why did you draw this person? And why do you think a scientist looks like that? Do you think they all look like that? And so it was so touching to really sit and hear these young girls speak about what scientists look like. I drew mine as well. And I held mine up. And of course, mine was the stereotypical male figure with a white lab coat. And one of the girls so clearly articulated it as I held my picture up. So she said, yeah, you typically see this guy with a big hefty lab coat mixing all kinds of crazy chemical formulas. And, you know, they went on. And afterwards they started to say, one girl actually drew a picture, which I thought was me because it looked like a black girl. And we all had pigtails, because that's one of the things I like to do in my informal mentoring, is try to get to on their level. It's not a formal setting. I'm not dressed up in a suit, you know,
Right.
with makeup and all that stuff. So it's informal. I want them to be comfortable. I want them to talk to each other, support each other, be free to express themselves. Because I feel like that's what true mentoring is. You know, you're connecting on that type of a level. At least that's what I want for them. So we all had pigtails on. So she drew this image of someone who was brown, you know, dark skin, and with pigtails and with goggles on and a coat. And of course I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, you drew me. That's what you think a scientist looks like? I was so honored. And so she started to explain it. And she says, no, and then I looked closer and it was her name that she put on top of the picture, because I said they can name their scientists.
Right.
And I said, wait a minute, is that you? And she said, yes, I wanted to draw a scientist like I want to be when I grow up. And she said,
Wow.
I want to be a doctor. And I literally almost started crying because, I mean, these things are not scripted. That's really their innocence, right? So, you know, moments like that is what I really live for. I do what I do because I want to generate these kinds of moments for the girls. I want them to have the moment where they feel like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. I know I can do it. I have the confidence to do it. I want to start to stir up these kinds of conversations with them from that age, so that when they step into, you know, a room where there's no one else who looks like them, they still have that confidence behind them. They still, you know, they know that from talking in these kinds of settings where they had all of this support and encouragement, that they can actually do it on their own. So
Right.
that's sort of what I wanted to. Hopefully that answers the question. I kind of went into different directions, but
Oh no, this was perfect. And as you were talking, I just kept thinking about all of the women in STEM, Black women in STEM, women of color in STEM, who are doing all these phenomenal things. But then when I go to education conferences, particularly focused in STEM, you don't see a lot of Black women or Black STEM teachers or professors represented in those forums. And it's just mind-boggling to me because there's so much greatness out there whenever I go on social media, but you don't see that in the major summits and conferences, which I find problematic even to this day, to the point where people are calling them out. People are calling out organizers for not having, you know, Latinx representation, Black representation, Indigenous representation. So we have to continue to make that known to the masses because that's important.
absolutely. And one thing I wanted to add to that also is that even through social media, I mean, that's how we met, obviously. So
Yes.
I think that has been an amazing platform to connect with people of color, specifically in the STEM fields. I've met so many phenomenal people, you know, through my social media accounts. Classy Chemist, obviously that's what my shirt says. But so I met so many people. We've connected. We're starting different kinds of collaborative projects. And so I think instead of relying solely on having these invitations and all of that stuff, we're just going to start creating it for ourselves. I'm starting to hear our voices echo a little bit louder, and I like the sound of
Yes.
it. Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be about. With all the intellectual property that we have as a collective, as a community, there's no reason why we can't have our own summit. There's no
Yeah.
reason at all why we can't have our own summit. We don't need to wait for that invitation to happen. But I do want to get back to your love for mentoring for a second, because I know that you just had a virtual STEAM Forward Academy that ended recently, correct?
We actually have the last day is this Saturday is our last day for the program.
Okay.
So yes, you're correct. It's a virtual STEAM Forward Academy program that I do a group that I do work with. And so just as a background, I have done STEM/STEAM, and I can use those interchangeably. So STEM obviously is science, technology, engineering, and math, but with the STEAM, you add the art component. So, I've been doing that for a long time, probably over 7 years, maybe. And so in doing so, I've connected and met with a lot of different people, especially women of color, because we tend to gravitate to each other, obviously.
Right.
So we actually, I'm thinking back to one of the big events that we did. We did something called Summer Science Series, I believe is what we called it. And we called ourselves the Sisters Through Science. So basically, we all worked at the same agency. Back then, it was the it is still called that, but it's where I used to work, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And there were a phenomenal bunch of women scientists who I worked with there. We got together on our lunch breaks, and we would pack little demo, tools and kits, and we went and provided these outreach services on our lunch breaks to a bunch of kids at a local church. They were doing like a summer camp at the church. So we did it. I believe it may have been a 6-week program. I don't remember the details, but it was awesome. And it was very fulfilling to see. We would walk in and they'd say, "The scientists are here." And they would all get excited. So it was fun. And again, it was on our lunch breaks. So we barely ate lunch during those, we probably eat at our desk or something, getting ready, like packing up our bags and, getting our little kits and stuff. And so out of that grew an idea for us to do something like a traveling STEM/STEAM team. So we started to brainstorm the idea. And again, this was years ago. We started to brainstorm the idea of doing that, like how we would actually get that, off the ground, what resources we would need to tap into, what other folks we would get involved. And then life happened, lots of things happened. People went into their different directions. Getting married, having kids, going into different areas, traveling. So the idea was shelved for a while. And it was not until recently that it sort of resurfaced, the idea of doing this sort of group activity to provide, STEM outreach opportunities to kids. And so obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, we can't necessarily do the traveling STEM team like we wanted. So providing these services on a virtual platform was the obvious solution. And so we got together and we started to brainstorm the idea for how we would actually make this possible, what kinds of, what the audience would be, how we would get the word out, all of that stuff that goes into your planning. And so I work with a really great group of women, Dr. Janita Pritchett, Dr. Nicole King, Dr. Christina Jones. They're awesome to work with. We have little powwow meetings sometimes, to talk about what's going to happen next, or how can we like revisit, what we just taught, how can we make it better. So the idea is, or the program, basically the setup is that on Saturday mornings, we log into our virtual platforms and we facilitate these programs, and they're live instructions. So the kids have all of their, their tools and their kits and all that stuff, their items, let's call it that. so that they can do their reactions. So we try to incorporate a little bit of science. Sometimes it's like a combination of, a bunch of different elements of STEM. So it might have a little engineering and art in there. We did a workshop recently called magnetic painting. So we spoke about a little bit of the magnetic forces,
Right.
which is a little physics component, but we also incorporated the art part of it so that students got to paint using magnets, and we showed them that they could use different objects to do that. So it's really fun. The kids always enjoy it. Parents are already asking about our next program, which is actually coming out very soon. We're going to be posting about it soon. So it's really, again, a quite fulfilling experience to be participating, with a group of people who are doing such great things in STEAM outreach.
Nice. And I'm assuming you all had to mail out the science kits to all the participants of the
No,
program?
actually, that's a good question. So that was one of the benefits of the program that we offer. So when you look at a lot of the typical programs that do offer these virtual science learning opportunities, a lot of them you have to purchase the kit to go with it or something like that. And I don't say this for all of them because I don't know, what exists out there for
Right.
every program, but for ours particularly, we wanted to make it as user friendly and as affordable as we could for the parents. So it actually enables the child and or children, because it's, a household can all participate, and the parents to utilize a lot of items that they already have at home. So, things like vinegar and oil and paper plates and paper cups and, paper clips. We try to incorporate a lot of the things that they may already have in their kitchen or in their toy box or their arts and crafts room or things like that, so that they can actually make science out of it, or make STEM or STEAM out of it.
All right. Well, that's awesome because I know that can be very costly having to get all the different components, the beakers, and the other types of tools that you need to do the different activities in labs, depending on what strand of science you're focusing on. So it's
Exactly.
great that you are able to make it cost effective for parents because I think that's essential because that can be costly.
Definitely.
So let's talk about your book series. So you have a new book series come out, building my self-esteem in science. So STEAM as in science, technology, education, art, mathematics. So
Yes.
what inspired you to start this series, and what are some of the lessons that you hope young people can learn from this series?
So, as you know, as I've already explained, I'm a very big advocate for STEM and STEAM. Being an adjunct chemistry professor myself, so I teach on the college level, but I also do a lot of work with outreach on, the for the younger kids as well, outreach, mentoring, that kind of thing. So, taking the idea of me really loving what I do in science and wanting other people to love it as well. So I took that idea, and I also took my passion and desire to nurture the younger kids and up and coming generation, and I sort of married those two, and I came up with a book that could actually inspire younger kids to want to do STEAM. Um, and so, Building My Self Esteem is a book. It's a fictional book. I actually have a copy of it right here. So I'm going to just kind of show it for those who haven't seen it yet. So it's a fictional book that shows the story of high school friends who come together to provide support to one of their classmates who is having difficulty in the field of science. So she's struggling with science in high school. And so her friends come together to help her overcome some of the fears and challenges that she's having. And so the main character, obviously, is the one in the middle. And if you look really closely and you squint, she kind of looks like me. And that was
Yeah, I was
intentional.
gonna say that.
That was intentional. So, like I said, the story is fictional. So, this is not exactly a story, or the events aren't exactly things that have happened in my during my high school days, but some of the information and the lessons in there actually are things that I've learned. So I wanted to definitely share that in the book with other kids who are possibly going through the same thing. And I also wanted to note that although it is a STEAM book, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math, it has some really good life lessons in general. So, you know, it's good for the kids to read about science. It has a lot of good science terminology in there. I also included, being an educator myself, I included a glossary. So, you know, for kids reading the book, not understanding what certain scientific terms mean, they can flip to the glossary really quickly and see the definition of it. You know, it's sort of like, it's an educational piece as well. It's not just, you know, a book that they want to read for leisure. It's fun, it's exciting, but it's also serving the dual purpose to educate. But what I was also saying is that in addition to it being a STEAM book or a science-based book, it has a lot of life lessons in there. You see the individual characters go through their own struggles. And as you start to learn about these characters, you get a glimpse of them in this book. But as you mentioned, it is a series, so we have more coming out. You get to see a little bit more of these other characters in their own elements once you get your hands on the new books that are going to be coming out.
Awesome. And when you talk about building my self-esteem, I'm thinking about the fact that in education, we have so many young people of color, particularly young girls of color, who come into science class with a fixed mindset about their ability to build capacity in the sciences. So was that part of what you're trying to accomplish with this series?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I myself going through, you know, having gone through that path in science and not necessarily feeling like I always belonged, or if I, you know, feeling like I was capable of accomplishing these goals in science and amounting to what I am today, or what I thought that was, you know, unachievable. I thought that the lessons that I've learned and the encouragement that I had, the mentoring, you know, it talks about all of those kinds of things. So for the young girl who is, like you said, walking into the science class, not having the confidence because perhaps they heard that science was just too difficult. You know, sometimes I throw around the word organic chemistry because I am an organic chemistry adjunct professor. So people look at me like, are you kidding? Like, how? Why would you do that to yourself? And so I say, it's actually not as bad as you think it is. It's actually really fun. Um, but I think that all starts with your mindset. So if you walk into a classroom with the preconceived notion that a course is something that's super hard or something you're never going to get, you already shut down your brain. You're not going to absorb anything. And so having that support system, you know, with you, or having these words of encouragement empower you, I think that was something that was definitely needed. So building my self-esteem, it offers you an opportunity to gain skills for how you can actually build your self-esteem. And I mean, self-esteem, using the actual meaning of the word esteem, but also it's a play on words, obviously,
Right.
building your confidence in the STEAM fields.
And that's also the case in math. So as a middle school math teacher, every year I've had at least a handful of students look at me, you know, all weird in the first few days of the school year and say, wow, like you're really my teacher.
Uh-huh.
Because math teachers don't look like this.
Right.
They don't come into class with locks
Mm-hmm.
and they're, you know, dressed up, you know, suit, shirt, slacks. Like that's not an image that you see quite often in our community. So to be able to portray that image to our students, it's so important. So important.
Absolutely. And I think just to play on that, what you just said about, you know, your students not really believing that you're the teacher until maybe you get in front of the classroom. I have a funny story that I like to share. I
Yes,
shared it
please.
before, but when I teach at the college level, one of the things I like to do, and this is before COVID, obviously, when you could be in class, at the beginning of the semester, one thing that I like to do is I'll sit in at the bench, at the lab bench, or in the classroom, at the classroom desk, as the students walk in, so they automatically assume I'm one of their, you know, another student. And I do that because I want to get an organic feel for my students. I like to do that. I like to understand how students learn. That's really important for me. I'm not one of those professors who has a fixed or a rigid structure in terms of the way I teach. But I also do it because I just want to observe what their reaction is, you know, when I once I actually walk up to the front of the classroom and formally introduce myself as the lecturer, the professor for the semester. And it's always interesting the reactions that I get. They're sort of looking at each other like, is this a joke? Like, what is that girl doing up there? Tell her to come back before the professor. I think I hear them saying it sort of with their eyes, but they don't actually verbalize that. But that's sort of what's going through their minds. Before the professor gets here, you need to get back to your seat. Stop playing games. But yes, it's very interesting to see those reactions and, to see the disbelief because they're not used to seeing that often.
Oh man, I should have tried that, but I wouldn't be able to get away with it. I wouldn't be able to get away with it, unfortunately. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
your kids are younger.
my kids are too young for that. But no, that is an awesome story. And the funny you mentioned this, I've seen other people, other professors at my college during my undergrad years do that same trick.
Really?
And it works every time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
just that reaction of shock, like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny, you always hear a few people, cracking jokes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this professor, he's probably gonna be corny, and then all of a sudden, professor comes up. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
I said that a bit too loud.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So right now, I want to shift to the lightning round because we want to get to know a little bit more about you. So
Okay.
we've been talking a lot about science, and I love science, but there's some other questions that I want to ask you to really get the audience to, really engage with you to, see what you do. So
Okay.
first thing I want to ask you is this. You have a favorite science joke you want to share?
Um, I have so many science jokes. My favorite one, and that's another thing, I post a little humor on my page, so people often like that. To show, again, like you said, that I'm not just all science. There are so many different parts of me that I like to, show certain glimpses of that. Favorite science joke, I like the one where it says, two guys walk into a bar and one says, I want some H2O, and the other one says, I want some H2O too. Um, Obviously meaning I want some H2O, which is water, the chemical formula for water. Saying I want some H2O too, which what he meant was saying he wanted some H2O also. He wanted some water also, but H2O2 is actually the chemical formula for peroxide, which is deadly. You don't want to drink that. So it's just kind of like a ha-ha moment. He asked for some poison.
Nah, that's a cute joke right there.
Mm-hmm.
And just take me back to my days when I was balancing equations, trying to remember the periodic table, all the elements. So
Yep.
that was
Yep.
that brought me back to my high school years. All right. Now I know you are a volleyball superstar. You love you some volleyball.
I love
So
volleyball.
what do you prefer? Spiking the ball or serving it?
Definitely spiking. Definitely spiking. I'm a front row player. For those who are watching who know about volleyball, you have your back row players and you have your front row players. When you're in the front row, you have a net, and there's nothing I like more than cracking a ball into the ground and hitting it as hard as I can. That is the ultimate stress relieving activity that I can do. I love it.
All right. And that was one of my favorite sports to play during gym class,
Mm-hmm.
volleyball. So I can definitely attest to the spiking part.
Yep.
All right. Another volleyball question. Are you a blocker or a setter? So
Oh,
you
that
like to
one's
set up people?
That one's easy. I am a blocker, and it's more than likely because I'm tall. So you probably can't see this, but I'm actually 5'10" so 5'11", pretty tall.
Oh.
And so when I'm at the front of the net, I can jump pretty high also. So I love. There's nothing more satisfying than shutting down and blocking the biggest, baddest, volleyball player on the other side of the net. So when they think they're about to get their points and their kills, you go up and you just put those hands up and you know you snuff them. So that's a
Nice.
very good moment for you when you as a volleyball player, shutting down one of the other big bad players.
Oh, that's the biggest adrenaline rush, I bet.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We had this chair in college. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, one of my coaches, as a volleyball player and you're on a team, you make these chairs, right? You do these
Right.
chants. So anytime we got a really big block, the bench, they would go, "Where's she going?" And we turn around and say, nowhere. Volleyball going nowhere. It was like my favorite.
Yes.
My volleyball girls are watching right now. They're probably all screaming right now, but that was one of our favorite things to do.
All right. And before I ask the next question, someone in the audience complimented you on your glasses, and they want to know where you got your glasses from.
Oh, thank you. I got these glasses from an online company. I have lots of different glasses. I love glasses. That's one of the things that I like about wearing glasses, that I can change them up now. When I was growing up and younger, I could not stand having to wear glasses because I felt like it made me look geeky. But now that I'm older and I can, find fashionable things online, so I'll try to find where I got this particular pair. I was wearing a different one yesterday that I got from a company called Z. But this one, I believe I got it. If I didn't get it from them, I probably got it from a very similar company. But I don't want to say that that's where I got it and send them on a wild goose chase. But I could definitely look it up, and I could probably post something about it. Or when this video comes out and you have it live and I share it, I could definitely put it in the comments.
Well,
The caption.
this is a live episode, so as soon as we get off the broadcast, it'll upload right into my YouTube channel, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, as y'all can see on the nameplate. So you could check it out there. But thinking about glasses, my wife, she wears glasses, and she came across this website where you could actually look at the camera and get a sense of what your prescription is. And you can choose the designs that you want for your frames. Like, it's really cool. Never seen that before.
Me neither.
Because now, yeah, because now with social distancing, you can't go into stores. It's just safer to do it from home. So if you know your prescription information and the other information you need to get the right glasses, you're good to go.
That sounds very convenient. And I mean, that's STEAM in action right there. Because hey, look at technology. You don't have to be there in person.
No, you're not lying about that. So name one book that every educator should read, other than yours, of course.
One book. Let's see. There's one book that I do like. It's called Frames of Mind, and it's by an author. I believe his name is Howard Gardner.
Multiple Intelligences.
Yeah. Oh, you know it. Okay.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had to learn about Gardner.
So you obviously know.
I have to know. Yeah.
It's a good book. And obviously you've read it. It talks about the idea of multiple intelligences. So I think that's a really good book that educators should read, because it breaks it down in so much detail. So I'm not even going to get into that. I probably don't even remember enough to do that, but it basically shows that you can't necessarily just use some sort of systematic exam like an IQ test or something to really gauge someone's intelligence. That there are different kinds of intelligence. So anything from linguistic intelligence, musical intelligence, spatial intelligence, personal intelligence. I mean, there's so much, and it gives a lot of good examples. Talking about the religious person who goes out and learns a language and goes and studies religion in depth. That's a different kind of intelligence than a mathematician or somebody else. Or a boat builder, let's say, who understands the dynamics of building a boat or all that stuff. You probably can't throw that person behind a computer screen or give them an exam book and have them fill out a set of questions and then give them a score at the end, because that number is not going to reflect on that particular type of intelligence that they've invested in. So I think it's a really good book because it may allow a teacher to understand that each student is unique in the things that they are strong in, and so that yes, there are. We live in a systematic, environment. Obviously, you have to generate these numbers to assess the students and things like that. So I'm definitely not against that. But there's also, a unique way to approach your teaching style. And I think that book helps you to embellish on that.
And what I like about Gardner's multiple intelligences theory is that it reiterates the importance of doing learning inventories with each student in your classroom. Yes. And gain a sense of how they best learn.
Exactly.
So you can differentiate the way that you do your instruction with your students.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, I have one more question.
Mhm.
If you can choose 3 influential figures, dead or alive, that you can invite to dinner, who would they be and why?
Well, hopefully they like my cooking. Otherwise, I'll have to order out. But
Y'all can go to a
three
restaurant.
influential. um, let's see. The first one that comes to mind, I think a lot of people would agree with, is Barack Obama. I would love to invite him to dinner. He seems like just an amazing person to talk to, influential, have a lot of funny stories to tell. Um, Another person that I would invite to dinner would probably be Chadwick Boseman. He obviously, it goes without saying, the impact and influence that he's had and all of the amazing things that he's done. Um, and let's see, the third one. Let's get a woman in there. Um, let's see, what Sojourner Truth. She was
Mm,
the abolitionist and activist who wrote, I believe, a speech, "In I Woman." I believe that's what it's called. So I think, she would probably be awesome to talk to. She, went to court, took a lot of like slave owners to court, to gain justice like that. That's the type of confidence that I want, that I want to have, like the confidence to be able to walk in and stand up for what I believe in without fear. Like it'd be awesome to sit and talk to someone like that.
yes. And there's so many phenomenal women in history who you could have brought to dinner. So you can't go wrong with that list. And then for people that are Barack Obama fans, A Promised Land, his new book just came out a couple days ago.
That's next on
So
my list. I definitely want to get my hands on that.
yeah, I gotta add that to the list. Growing list of books. All
When do
right.
you find time to read? When do you find the time?
You just try to squeeze in whenever time you have available. I mean, I have a 3-year-old son, so whenever he's asleep, whenever he's playing with his Legos or engaged in some
Mhm.
other activity, I try to squeeze the time in. So you get creative with that. You
Yep.
definitely do.
Yep.
But Dr. Yasmine Daniels, thank you for being on the show. This has been amazing. But before you go, if you could just share with us your social media information and also where people can get your books so we can continue to support you and all the work you're doing.
Of course. And thank you for having me. I had fun, talking to you, chatting about all of these wonderful topics. So if you want to follow me on social media, feel free to check out my Instagram and my YouTube. It's at Classy Chemist. And if you are on Twitter and Facebook, it's Classy Cheminist with an N. So it's sort of like a spin-off of feminist. It's Classy Cheminist. You can also get a copy of my book on Amazon. So you can type in my name, Yasmine Daniels or Dr. Yasmine Daniels, or you can type the title of the book in. That's Building My Self-Esteem in Science. Well, I will also be having a virtual book signing coming up. And a lot of people have been asking me, how is that even going to happen? I'm working with a group of people who are going to be making it happen. It's happening, and it's going to be on December 5th. There will be a limited number of books available for purchase, and they will each be individually signed and sent out to the buyers. So I will be making an announcement about that very soon on my social media platforms. So stay tuned and lock that date in.
All right, people, you all heard it. Please make sure you get a copy of volume 1 of Build My Self-Esteem in Science. Out now. Let's support our Black women in business. Let's support. Yes, I'll zoom in so you can show the book again. Man, that's
There
just
it
an
is.
incredible cover. Who was the illustrator for that? Who illustrated the
Oh,
cover?
that's a good question. Let me show the bottom of it. So I actually regret not mentioning this sooner, but I worked with an incredible team. The publishing company is McBride Stories, a phenomenal group of people that I work with there. And the illustrator is H.H. Pack. So they have both worked on some really amazing books. You can check out all of their books. I believe McBride Stories has published over 90 books already. And so they have a lot of experience field in this area. And it was wonderful working with them. They were able to take the story and the ideas that I had and to really help me bring it to life. The illustrations in the book, I've been getting so much wonderful feedback about them. The characters were specifically designed to look the way they do, for my own reasons, but I wanted them to also connect with, the readers. So I'm really fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with this team. And I definitely want to give them a lot of credit for helping to get this project out.
Yes, and shout out to the illustrators and all the other creatives that were involved in this project. They don't get enough love when books come out. We focus on the author, but we got to focus on everybody that's involved because they
Oh,
all
yeah,
play an
absolutely.
important role in all this. But Dr. Daniels,
I
thank
agree.
you again. I know you have another long day ahead of you tomorrow, so I'll make sure you get your rest. And we're gonna
Thank
do
you.
this again. We're gonna do this again because there's still so much we have to talk about. So we'll see if we could do a part
I look
two
forward to it.
later on. No, absolutely, especially when those
Awesome.
next
I look
volumes
forward
come
to it.
out. All right,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
all right. So you have a good night.
All righty. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
All right. And thank you everybody for tuning in for another episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live. I'm your host again, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. So wherever you are in the world, I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.